Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's webinar. I'm very excited to present or to introduce our speaker today. But before I do so, I want to go ahead and just read off some housekeeping notes that we have for you. First of all, I want to say, please check out www.talend.com for our latest product information and events. We got some exciting programs coming up in the future that I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to take advantage of, starting with our Talend Data Governance webinar, followed by Talend Connect. Make sure you scan the QR code down at the bottom right of this slide so you can register for this amazing event. We also have released the Gartner Magic Quadrant Report, which you can find on our website, as well as we will be at AWS reInvent this year at booth 2847. So make sure you stop by if you're attending that program. As it relates to this webinar, we ask that you please use the chat feature. We do want to hear from you. We also want to get your feedback. We have a few questions that we've put together that we will be using throughout today's webinar. So please make sure you take advantage of that feedback feature. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Greg Mimers, system engineer here at Talend. And he is the person to go to when it comes to any of our technologies and implementation. So I'm very excited to hear about what Greg has to present to us today. Greg?
Thanks, Bradley. So I just want to make sure that everyone, and welcome everyone. I'm glad you're all here. It's going to be an exciting event. I'm pretty excited about it myself. I have a brief agenda, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about CDC, what happened at Talend. We'll go through a couple of use cases. We'll talk about the architecture. You'll see a live demo, and then we'll talk about next steps in Q&A. And as always, right, we're excited that you're here, and we're glad you're participating. If you need more information, we'll help you find it. First and foremost, anybody who's familiar with Talend lately understands that our mantra is data health. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get data to the people and places that need it in a manner which it makes it useful for the business. So businesses operate on data, and we want to make sure that that data is good, valid, and timely, and then you're able to make good decisions off of that. I don't need to tell you guys, what's happening out there. You're experiencing it, right? Data is growing exponentially, right? So whether it's the number of data sources and how you're getting them, it used to be, everything was via email. Now it's, Facebook and social media and, PDAs and all kinds of things that are bringing data, chips, RFID chips, things are just exploding in the data area. And the idea is that, you have a need to manage that data and an expectation from the business to deliver it to them in real time, right? If it's stale, if it's old, it doesn't do you any good. And the other thing is the complexity of these environments, right? So, it used to be that you connect to a couple of systems. Well, now how do you add social media, or how do you add user sentiment or other things into that infrastructure? And it's really difficult. And those are types of things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's this explosion of data and the need to get it in real time, faster than ever. So what happened? If you guys have been following Talend at any length, you would have noticed that we made an acquisition not too long ago. On April 7th of this year, we acquired a company called Gamasoft. I've got a link up here if you want to read in more detail, but I wanted to highlight a paragraph or so. And I'm a technical guy by nature, so I'm very interested in what this was to me personally, being an employee of Talend. And I found out that this is, continuously tracking and replicating data from a data source, such as a warehouse or a lake, making it available to databases and destinations without requiring an impact on that data source, right? So for me, technically, it's fit a need that Talend had in its current architecture, right? By being able to grab data like this, right? If you have a data source on your left-hand side, And with the traditional data sources, you would either extract the data in its entirety, or select it row by row and try to bring over the changes manually or some other method, right? But with CDC, we have the ability to kind of listen or look at the transaction logs and figure out what's been changed, and as it's been changed, apply those changes to the target destination, right? Now, this is pretty incredible stuff, because prior to that, like I said, you would have to actually impact the data source, right? You'd have to put another infrastructure on top. So what does this change data capture capability do for you and for us? Number one, it allows us to perform these advanced replication topologies, right? So whether you're doing bidirectional replication, single directional replication, multicast replication, those types of replication scenarios are now available with inside of Talend. Two, it provides a continuous real-time replication of only the data that's changed, right? So if you have a terabyte of data, let's think about all of the orders or all the products that you have that are not being modified, that haven't been changed, you don't have to replicate all of that data every time you need an update. All you have to get is anything that's changed since the last time you grabbed that change. And then the last component here is a non-intrusive data detection method, right? I don't want to go to the source system. I don't want to impact the sales or the operations or whatever it is the data is I'm grabbing by just getting the changes. I want to know about those changes and be able to do that without impacting that data source. And I want to do it in a fast and reliable way. And that's what this change data capture allows us to do. So, some of you are probably from the business side. So from a technical side, it's great. Hey, what Greg said is, we can look at data, we can grab the changes, and we can apply them without impacting the data source. Why? Because we're going against the data logs. Great. Business is going, okay, I don't get it, and I don't really care. This is what I want. I want to get this data, and I want to get it quickly, and I want to get to my business, and I want to get it to my BI folks, and I want to get it to the people who are making decisions, and I want it in real time, right? I need to know where things are in my supply chain. I want to know what's happening real time. That's what I want. And it looks like this from the business side. Well, and I'll start over on the right-hand side. I want to make faster decisions with real-time data that I trust, right? That's what the business is asking for. Well, how do I do that? Well, I can use Talon CDC, right? I can implement that, and I can allow multi-directional, bidirectional replication with a non-intrusive environment, right? So I can send data back and forth, and I can do it in real time, and now I can make it available to the people who need it. And then over on the left, I can do that in real time, and it's faster than ever, right? So I don't have to wait for a batch process. I don't have to load the entire data set. I don't have to wait till the end of business day. I can get those changes in real time as it's happening. All right. So what's a couple of other scenarios when you think about that, right? Well, if you're a business person, you're probably out on the right-hand side, and you want all your data into the cloud. So you want it to be migrated off premises and into the cloud, right? If you're a technical person, you're probably in the middle of this diagram where you're going, okay, what am I going to do to grab the changes and then send those, to the cloud? And then if you're, working with the legacy systems, you're on the left. So you're on-prem, you're creating data inside of the data sources or applications. So how does this work, right? Well, you have the data sources and you want to move them into the cloud. So you implement Talend Change Data Capture. That allows you to replicate that data from your sources when it changes or in its entirety at the beginning to your target, which is in the cloud. And then you can do that either via the database directly or a call into Kafka, right? So I can send the changes either to a single database, multiple databases, or to a messaging queue or messaging queue, which will pick up those changes and apply those in real time to the target. So when your business folks are looking at your data in the cloud, they're looking at real-time data. All right, what about multi-cloud synchronization, right? So now I have different business users throughout the organization, throughout the globe, that are trying to pick up on data sets that are being changed at our corporate data warehouse. And they need that information in its entirety, and they need it as soon as possible. They don't want to wait for end of day, end of week, end of month business reports. Again, implement change data capture in between those data sources, and then you can multicast that information in synchronous to those ends. Looks like this is a great time for a poll. I'm going to pause here while you know, we allow you guys to answer this poll, right, Bradley?
Sorry about that. That was a technical difficulty. Please go ahead and proceed.
Okay, just clear this then.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, so real-time advanced analytics. Same holds true here. You have a data source, right? You want to capture those changes in real time. You want to make up-to-date decisions as information is changing. Put change data capture in the middle there. You can grab the changes as they happen, as they go into the logs, update your data warehouses, update your queuing systems, update your BI reports, and now you're operating on real-time data. So how does this fit into Talend, and how does this fit into the data health story? Again, you know, if you look at Talend, we're trying to make sure that you get reliable data in a timely manner. And this does it, right? It allows us to do real time and freshen up your data and enable your analytics to happen in real time, right? We also help you modernize your data into the cloud. So if you want to synchronize data from on-prem into the cloud, it's a nice lift and shift or replication kind of interface that allows you to keep that data consistent across your organization. Establish data excellence with a consistent stream of accessible data that's reliable. You can now make decisions and know that you're looking at information that's current, right? And with all your systems aligned, you can do bidirectional synchronization. So you have multiple systems and they need to talk to each other, and you can update values in either one of the systems. This architecture allows you to do that. Might be asking yourself, okay, Greg, that's fantastic, right? I'd like to, you know, I'd like to know more about this, and I'd like to figure out, you know, how this change data capture is going to fit into my organization. If you look at this chart on the left-hand side, you'll see the data sources we currently support with CDC, right? So we support Oracle. We started in the iSeries area, so AS400, if you guys have any of that, SQL Server, MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres, and Progress as well. So those are all supported today out of the box. On the bottom, you'll see that soon to be released are a couple of data sources that includes Kafka and Salesforce. So if you're looking to grab changes from any one of those areas, Change Data Capture supports that. On the right-hand side, you'll see some of the traditional data targets that we support. Things like, as I mentioned, if you're going into the cloud, you'll see Snowflake, or maybe you'll see Azure. You'll see Oracle, Teradata, other data sets there. And you'll also notice in the middle, we support Kafka, Kinesis, Event Hub, right? So the cloud-based and also on-prem streaming services. And at the bottom, we support SAP, Salesforce, and Files for targets, right? What does this do? Well, you know, one of the targets here you'll notice is Kafka. So today, if you're currently a Talend customer, you can send data to Kafka. Talend can listen for those changes, apply those changes, and go to any number of not only these targets that are included out of the box with our Change Data Capture technology, but any target that Talend provides. And as you guys are well aware of, that's thousands of components that Talend has to do those types of integrations. All right. And what is a good technical discussion without a high-level architecture, right? So as you guys know, I'm a technical person. If you look at this diagram, this is a very high-level overview of how Talon CDC works. On the left-hand side, and you can look at this, and at the bottom, you can kind of say that these are domains or these are actual servers, right? So on the left-hand side here, you'll have your data sources. So those could be, you know, Oracle, SQL, you know, AS400, right, or any of the other sources that we support. In the middle here is the, you know, the Talend infrastructure, right? So we have a GUI that allows you to kind of create the interface. We have some processes, right, that read the logs and the journals, and this is our infrastructure. And then you have the targets, right, on the right-hand side. So a 3-tier architecture. And then the target databases over here on. Again, this interface here is just an interface, so I can go into the interface, I can create my my replications, I can close the interface, and this will continue to run, right? So I don't need the interface up and running to in fact capture changes and continue to do work. I just need that to set those interfaces. All right, demo time. All right. And before I do that, I think there might be some questions. I don't know, Bradley, are you looking at the questions?
Greg, I can handle some of the questions for you.
Excellent. I appreciate that, Mitch. All right. So, you know, if you guys are seeing my screen, what you'll see is my change data capture interface, right? You know, when you get started, you log into this interface, you connect to a data source, and you set up an environment, right? So I could set up an environment by saying an environment, add, give it an abbreviation, you know, EN for environment, and EN, say add. You'll see that I have an environment here. The next step is to create a model, right? A model is going to be a replication. So I can add a source, right? And I'm going to be using my training database. And I can call this model, you know, M9 or whatever the model is. I could give it a description. This is my test model. And I can tell it what database I'm going to be utilizing and if I'm journaling or if I'm replicating the entire data set. Next, you'll see here that I have source and target, right? So I can go down into this model and I can identify which tables that I would like to replicate. So if I click on this object and I say, okay, yes, I want to add a table, I can do a query. So I can query that database itself and say, yeah, I want to replicate the sales data. I can, you know, copy over the sales data itself. Now in here, in the options, if I say free, I want to just copy or replicate the data directly. So if I'm taking sales data from a sales table and I want to replicate it to a sales table, it's going to give me only the columns that are given to me inside of this table itself for replication. If I select down here and I go into staging or audit, it will allow me to actually get some of the statistics or some of the information that I have provided for me by the Talon CDC tool. So for example, maybe I'm looking at the time or the date that that's been replicated, whether it was an insert, update, or delete. I can send that information with the replication as well. Then once I'm finished, I can say okay, and then I can see that I have a table over here as a source. I do the same thing here as a target. So I can go here, I want to add a target. I can say what it is. It's, you know, it's going to be a TA for a target. If I keep this as hold, then the you know, job is just going to be a work in progress. It's not going to actually start up. I can give it a name. So this is my target. And then this host here, down here, this address is where it is that Talend Change Data Capture is. It's on my local host, and I can say add, right? I can go into there and I can say go ahead and distribute, right? So I can bring over, you know, that data source and say I want to take that and put it into my data target. And then here it's going to ask me, okay, when I do that, how am I going to connect to that particular data source and target? So if I go to the target and I say, well, I want to, you know, send this either bidirectionally, or I want to send it over to Kafka, or I want to send it to SAP HANA, or I want to send it to Salesforce, I can select where it is that the target is. And then when I'm done, you know, selecting my target, I can go over here to activity and I can start up this replication. If I want to see a high-level map of what that looks like, I go into the maps and see it this way. Sense? Okay. All right. So here you can see that I have a replication, right? Actually, a couple replications. And this one, this replication is on. So you can see that it's green. It's doing some replication. And this is replicating from a data source to a target, right? So if I look here at my data sources, I have this M2. I can go into M2. I can see the table. The table that I'm replicating is category, right? and the target or the location that I'm replicating it to is either here, which is M2, into this other table, and I can see the columns that I'm replicating. If I wanted to look at what's happening here, I can just go ahead and right mouse click and say, look at the properties. Properties are going to show me things like, how it is that I'm connecting to the data source via ODBC. If I wanted to turn this off, for example, at some point, so I want it to run every day, but I don't want it to run on Saturday and Sunday because that's when we do our full migrations or whatever it is that we're doing. If I wanted to add a script at the end of this, I could do that as well. And here I can see the activity. So as transactions are going through here, I can see the activity that's going through the interface. Right, pretty simple interface. So if I actually look at that table, I'm replicating inside of this database. There's a table here called category, right? Inside of my training database, and inside of this, it's only got a few columns. So here I can, if I wanted to, I can, update this field. But before I do that, I'm replicating currently to this database, right? So I can actually view these columns. So if I go into category and I right mouse click and I say select top 1,000 rows, I can see that it says, Talend is CDC, right? If I say, well, I want to update this, so I can change this to is fantastic, right? And then commit the change itself. I can, again, go back into my target database and select the rows, and you'll see Talend is fantastic. So it's created the update for me in that database. If I add a new row, like if I say 6, and I say this webinar tool, right? And I update it there. Well, then if I go back into the database and I select the rows, you'll see, boom, this webinar is cool. So no matter what change I'm doing, it's replicating the change directly. If I go into this and I delete it, I say, yes, I want to permanently delete it. Then I go back and query the new table, and boom, there it is. It's gone, right? So, and I can look back here and I can see that, as this is happening, the reads and the writes and the updates are updating here inside of the C, right? So, that's a nice way to do it. Well, you can see here that I have, multiple jobs that are taking journal entries, and this one's updating a database, and this one's going to go update Kafka. So if I go into the properties of this particular activity, and I just say, let's go ahead and let's start this guy up, right? And I can see that, if I go into this is M1, so I can see here that the table that I'm listening to is called subcategory, right? So it's different than category, or what I was in before. So instead of going in here to categories, if I go into the subcategory, I have, now a table inside of subcategory, and I want to listen to those changes, right? Here, anybody who's familiar with Talend, right, knows that we have a couple of different interfaces that allow you to do this. This is the standard job interface where I'm going to listen to Kafka, so I can go ahead and start this Talend job up. And obviously, I can route the messages as they come in either to different locations, to different jobs, to different destinations, and you have the full breadth of the Talend palette here, right? So this is going to listen to, any messages that come across that get, from that database that get updated, inserted, or deleted, right? So if I go back to the database here, and now I add 101, 101. Let's say this is Talend software, and I put in a number. You'll see that this will go ahead and get picked up, and it sends it out here to this particular inserts, because I just inserted a row, and then in the message itself, it tells me that this is a new insert, right, for this specific key, and what was inserted was 101, and Talend software. Excellent. What happens if I do an update? So instead of Talend software, if I say Talend, CDC software, right? Again, as soon as that change happens, you can see it goes into the log itself. Instead of saying an insert, you'll see here, it changed that to an update. That update is now Talon CDC software, right? And if I delete that record, I want to know about that as well. So if I highlight this and then delete it, do you want to permanently delete it? Sure. Once I do that, you'll notice here, now I have another record and it says I've deleted it. So you can see I've updated, deleted, and inserted into a database directly. I could go bidirectional if I wanted to, or I can even send this to Kafka, which has Talend listening on the other end. They can now take that change and in real time apply it to any number of different destinations. All right, I'm gonna pause here, get out of the demonstration mode, and see, Bradley, are you gonna throw the polls up?
Yes, sir. I'm going to attempt to pull this one more time. And we are
all right,
ready,
folks. Yeah, go ahead, Bradley.
All right, I just relaunched the poll. I do apologize for technical difficulties previously, but if you could please take the time to complete this poll, we would love to get your feedback. Thank you.
Yep, we do have a few more slides, just so you know. All right, looks like the poll is going. We'll give folks a couple minutes or a minute or two to answer the poll, and then when you're ready, Bradley, I can keep you on. How's that?
That sounds great. Mitch, do we have any urgent questions that Greg can answer for us while we're waiting for this to complete?
I am powering through relatively quickly. There are a lot of questions, so I'm doing my best. I've answered 7 of 15 and I haven't even read them all. So we may need to take some of these to follow up with after, but I am doing my best to achieve them. But thank you. Keep the questions coming. If I am unable to get to them before the end of the webinar, I will certainly follow up directly with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Mitch, for answering those questions. As Mitch said, if you have more questions as we go through this, or we're not answering something that's on the top of your mind, obviously what we'd like you to do is get those answered. So whether you reach out to Bradley directly or the person who invited you, we're going to try to at least capture all these questions and answer those people directly if we can, and if not, we'll follow up with you and make sure that you get an answer. All right, looks like 30, 40, 50, looks like 60 or 70 folks have already answered. Yeah, 62. So we'll leave, half of the people out there are responding to the polls, and I really appreciate that.
Greg, I'll leave the polls open while you finish your discussion, and I will monitor quickly. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, cool. All right, so you guys saw my demo. It was fairly easy, fairly straightforward, right? Just some basic replication. If I were you, I'd be sitting there saying, well, okay, Greg, that's fantastic, but so what, right? I'm not just doing changes on one or two objects, one or two rows. I'm doing billions of transactions. So can you guys actually perform in that kind of arena? And the answer is yes. And then on the screen here, you have 3 use cases, the environments that they're in. So you'll notice the ones on the left were Oracle environments. The one on the right is an AS400 environment. You can see the number of targets. So we're writing to multiple targets via one source. And you can see the type of machine that we're running on. So that gives you a little indication of, if you're doing billions of transactions hourly, daily, monthly, yes, Talend can scale to meet those demands. Next thing you might be asking is, okay, Greg, that's fantastic. Talend's brought on this technology. How do I know it's really been incorporated into the Talend family? Well, first and foremost, if you go out to help.talend.com, I have a few links up here that you see, but if you go to help.talend.com and look for Change Data Capture, and either Change Data Capture installation, Change Data Capture reference, Change Data Capture user, you'll notice that it's up, it's loaded, and it's live. The version is 7.3, right? So it will come in line with the rest of our releases eventually, but right now you'll notice that it's on a 7.3 release. So our documentation is live, information is live. Please go out there and browse and look for information if you're interested. Well, what's a good presentation without a good use case? We have a use case, Geodis, and you may or may not know this company, right? So this company, you can think of them as part of a distribution company, right? So if I'm Amazon or if I'm someone else like UPS in the US and I'm shipping things, goods and services throughout the US, if you think about that last mile, so Amazon ships to their manufacturing hubs or their distribution centers, and then they get as close to the customer as possible. But sometimes you get into these areas that are really tough to deliver. And in that case, you have these organizations that do this last mile delivery, right? Why? Because they know the area better, they're faster at it, and they can do it more reliable than, Amazon can, or one of these big distribution centers, somewhere else. So that's what they do, and they do that in Europe, and they do it really well. Their challenge is, obviously, if you think about that business, I want to know where my package is now, right? And I want a real-time update of when that's going to be delivered, and I want to know once it's been delivered that it's been delivered and is satisfactory delivered or received, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's exactly what this company is using our Change Data Capture for. Right? They need that real-time, immediate analytics, up-to-date information so they can make informed and reliable business decisions. Okay, so why did, what makes this different? Why is Talend unique? However it is that you want to ask this question. The answer is, before we had this Change Data Capture capability, Talend did have some technology inside of our current infrastructure. And what we would do is we would, reach into a database and we would extract information, right? But we listened to you, right? Our customers and our prospects said, you know what? We want to be able to do that and not impact the data sources, right? We need real-time data replication that doesn't impact my data sources. And that's what this fulfills. Right? So if you're trying to connect to Oracle, if you're trying to connect to a SQL Server or MySQL or a database, and you want that information in real time without impacting that data source, then this is that solution for you. Right? It's enterprise class. What does that mean? Well, it means that we support those traditional change data capture topologies. So whether you're doing multicast, so you're taking your system and you want to multicast it to multiple different destinations, databases, or broadcast it to different areas, or as you saw in the example, create a real-time replication pipeline, you can do that with Talend, right? And then we're independent. As you know, and you're familiar with Talend, we've got a technology now that fits into our architecture that's cloud independent. So you don't have to run on Azure. You don't have to run on AWS. You don't have to run on Google. You can run on-prem. You can run in the cloud. This technology fits into our stack perfectly. Okay. As we kind of get close to a close here, there's some recommended next steps, right? So first and foremost, you guys may have a use case now that you've kind of thought about after going through this presentation and saying, hey, I wonder if my use case fits this change data capture stuff that Greg talked about. Or, you might be sitting there as a technical, person saying, well, I wonder if architecturally this is actually going to fit into my environment, and will it meet my operational needs? Because, Greg said a lot of great things, but I don't really know if this is going to fit the business case or the technical use case that I'm thinking about. Or maybe you're a technologist like myself and you're like, hey, Mitch, Greg, Brad, I want to, just test drive this stuff. I want to get my hands on the technology. I want to take this to the next level. I just don't want a PowerPoint or a canned demo, to come across. I want to actually use it myself. My recommendation is to reach out to the person who helped you get invited to this webinar and ask for a discovery call with them. Tell them what your needs are, tell them what it is that you're interested in, and set up this call. And myself, Mitch, Brad, or somebody at Talend will get with you and ensure that you have what you need to continue your investigation of Talend's change data capture.
All right, at this time, I'd like to go ahead and conclude this webinar. I want to, send out a special thanks to Greg Mimers, as well as Mitch Ogilvy and the entire product marketing team here at Talend for all their work they've put into CDC as well as this webinar. I do encourage you to check out www.talend.com for more information about any of our products, as well as our future events. And if you would like to schedule a meeting for any type of follow-up or a deep dive and review of the CDC tool, please feel free to contact any one of us. And thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Take care.